So that's it. The assisted dying so-called bill has passed its vote in the House of Commons. To be honest, the die was cast on the 4th of July. When the current batch of MPs were elected, this was going to happen. Now, you may say a lot of them were unsure. They didn't know what they thought until close to the vote. No, but they came with their set of values. And when they listened to the arguments from the perspective of their own values, they came to these decisions. I think the campaign against assisted suicide has been absolutely excellent. They've seemed to do everything right, lots of coverage, made their points really, really well. But at the end of the day, with that batch of MPs that were elected on the 4th of July, basically they were going to lose. And this bill was going to pass at this stage, at least. Now, from my point of view, obviously, I think this emphasises that the strategy of vote for who you like, and then we can sort it out later. We can write enough letters, we can campaign enough, we can fill in enough consultations, we can see enough MPs, we can sort it out later. Don't worry about who you vote for. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's who is in the House of Commons. It's who is in the Scottish Parliament. That's the crucial thing, because they're elected with their values, with their attitudes, and then they're going to make decisions on that basis. So I listened to quite a lot of the debate this morning and this afternoon. I would say overall it's a higher quality of debate than you get in the Scottish Parliament. I'm not quite sure why that is. A lot of it was very repetitive. The arguments against assisted suicide, well, coercion, pressure, what about depressed people? It plants the idea in people's minds, the slippery slope. Now, the slippery slope arguments, some people responded to it by saying, look at the different countries. They haven't all slipped down the slope to the same degree as each other. That's hardly a refutation of a slippery slope, is it? The fact that once you endorse suicide, then more people are going to choose suicide. But all those arguments, I thought, they're practical consequence arguments. They're saying that if we do this, these are problems that are going to ensue. And a phrase that kept coming up again and again in the debate was, the devil is in the detail. So the main principle, that's not the thing, that's not what we really need to be focusing on, but there's some details about this particular bill that we don't think are quite right. Now, I'd like to take the wider picture and say, actually, the core of this is a moral issue. It's about killing human beings. It's about suicide. It's about the value of every human life. Now, with the abortion debate, pro-life campaigners, they sometimes talk about the negative emotional effect on women who have abortions. They might talk about health dangers related to abortion. They might talk about coercion. But these are generally seen as secondary issues. They're very important and it's good to campaign on them, but they're secondary issues. The core issue is the value of human life and the taking of innocent human life. Whereas with the assisted suicide issue, the core moral issue hasn't tended to be at the heart of discussion. It's tended to be the secondary issues that have dominated. Now, say the core issue, the taking of life, innocent life, taking of one's own life, is a very grave moral issue. Now, when I approach moral issues, I approached it from three directions. You've probably heard me say this before. The first one, well, in no particular order, but anyway, the first one I'll talk about is intuition or conscience. I believe we have a faculty that just gives us direct knowledge of moral truth. And when it comes to suicide, my intuition, my conscience tells me that that's wrong. And conscience is extremely important. Some people might say, oh, it's just a feeling, you can't trust that. I won't go into details about that argument, but everybody trusts their conscience because apart from religious reasons, there's nowhere else to start a moral discussion. So my conscience tells me it's wrong. As a Christian, I look at Revelation. I think what God's revealed about the matter in the Bible. I'd say the Bible's teaching on suicide is not the clearest, it's not particularly explicit, but my conclusion from the Bible on the whole is that suicide is not presented in a positive light at all, in any way, shape or form. And another aspect as well from my sort of personal religious perspective, this idea that you own your own life, it's my life, well, I would see things differently. I believe my life isn't my own life, my life is a gift. Etc. And then the last where I decide if something's right or wrong is to use reason, which often involves looking at the consequences of it. And I've already talked about some of the consequences that I think would be very negative. Now, someone challenged me, it was Phil Holden actually, challenged me the other day, we were talking about this. Because in the family party, when I speak on behalf of the family party, I tend to focus on the reason aspect. Let's look at the consequences of this for society. It's going to be negative in this way, this for these people, etc. Don't tend to focus on the moral principle so explicitly. But I thought, on the other hand, if you don't focus, well, the advantage of the moral principle is that can stop something before it starts to go wrong. If you uphold the moral principle, then You're protecting everyone to the maximum degree. Now, Richard Tice of the Reform Party, his line on assisted suicide was, why don't we give it a try? So it was quite remarkable. But giving these things a try, an awful lot of people are going to be very hurt, and the damage done to society and its values and its ethos will be very serious. And, well, can it ever be repaired? I don't know, but it's going to be very serious damage to our society. But if you uphold the moral principle, make your decisions on the basis of the moral principle, then you don't need to do these dangerous experiments to see what happens, to see how it turns out. Now, in the debate in the House of Commons, I initially, after listening for a couple of hours, no one had talked about the core moral point. But later on, a couple of people did, which was good. They did bring that in. And I was just thinking that really does need to be there, partly to awaken people's consciences, because I think everyone basically has the same conscience, has the same sense of right and wrong. I think it can be confused and overridden in many ways, but to speak the moral truth helps to awaken people's consciences. Now, if you were to say, I just believe that life's precious, I believe taking life is wrong inherently, and some people might say, oh, well, that's just a personal view. You can't expect other people to live according to your personal view. But I believe that moral principles are unavoidably related with negative consequences. If something's wrong, then it's going to have bad consequences for society. I would say, even if we can't particularly foresee what those bad consequences are going to be, there are going to be harmful consequences when a society moves in a direction of a moral evil. So I think in this case, I think bringing in that core moral truth is very important in the future. So when I heard the people, MPs, standing up one after another saying, the devil's in the detail, the devil's in the detail, well, I would maybe say maybe the devil's in the principle of this bill. So what will happen in Scotland? Well, this is going to embolden the campaigners in Scotland. Liam MacArthur of the Scottish Lib Dems will be pushing forward his bill more enthusiastically. I now think the MSPs will be more likely to vote for it because it won't seem that it's sticking their neck out quite as much as they were before. So I would imagine it will probably pass in Scotland. But the other vital thing I need to say, the first vital thing I said from the family party point of view, is voting for who you like and then sorting out the problem later by writing letters and campaigning doesn't work. If you've got the wrong people in the parliament, they're going to make the wrong decisions. Now, with a bill like this, what normally happens is this sort of social change takes place. There's a bit of a controversy about it at the time. Then it passes and then just gets taken for granted. Then the next controversy comes along. And the people who were opposing assisted suicide, 10 years ago, they're now opposing the extension of it or something else that's come along. But what tends not to happen in politics as the UK is that parties don't come along saying, right, we've got to go and fix what went wrong 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 60 years ago. We're not just fighting the latest thing. We're not just dragging our heels over the latest issue. And that's very definitely opposition as the family party. So it's very, very likely this is going to pass into law now in the whole of the UK. But our policy will always be to repeal it. And the other parties, every party bigger than us in Scotland, their policy would not to repeal it. They would just say it's water under the bridge, forget about it, and it will continue. So ultimately, democracy, where is power? Power is in your vote on election day. And that's why we've ended up in this situation, and that's the only way we'll get out of it. So if you want to support us in this endeavour, do join the Scottish Family Party. There's a link below. We would love to meet you. You'd be very welcome to join us in various activities. But thanks for watching.